Hello and welcome to the online video lecture, English as Lingua Franca. My name is Mr. Sultan and this lecture is for the AP Human Geography course at Abraham Lincoln High School in San Francisco, California. This lecture will be one of the potential FRQs in the upcoming Chapter 6 exam. The topic of the lecture is English as Lingua Franca, or how did English become the worldwide language? So we're going to start the lecture with asking ourselves, what is a lingua franca? So we'll start with the historical definition. A lingua franca comes from the group of people known as the Franks, who in the Middle Ages traded throughout the Mediterranean. So here they are in their boats, and they're going really from port to port, from Italy to Sicily to North Africa, up into the Adriatic Sea, to Venice, to the island of Cyprus, to Crete, over to the Middle East, back to North Africa, and eventually returning home. So as these people traveled from port to port, they needed a language that they could speak to everyone in all of these different ports, because everyone in all of these different ports spoke different languages. You had French, you had Italian, you had Greek, you had Arabic, you had Spanish. So they developed a language that they could use while trading in all of these ports that everyone would be able to speak. And much of these languages actually contain some common words that you still find today. So this is the original lingua franca. The original definition is the common language spoken in the ports of the Mediterranean that was a mix of French, Italian, Spanish, Greek, and Arabic. So that's the original definition. But what is the definition today? Well, similar to back then, it's a common language. But today, a lingua franca means a language that facilitates communication or trade between people who speak different native languages. So for example, if I have a Hindi speaker who's traveling to Norway, there's a good chance that the Hindi speaker from India will probably not learn Norwegian, nor will the Norwegian person learn Hindi. However, they still need a language to communicate with each other, and that language is often going to be English. Today, English is the worldwide lingua franca, and this lecture is going to investigate why that is. So we're going to look at the story of how English became the worldwide lingua franca, and we're really going to examine two distinct features. We're going to look at historical factors first, and then we're going to examine the role that globalization plays. First, the historical factors. The first historical factor that we're going to discuss is British colonialism and imperialism. Beginning in the 15th century, Great Britain began to colonize and create an empire that really stretched over the entire globe, starting, as we can see here, in the Americas with Canada, 13 colonies, as well as small colonies throughout the Caribbean and even into Central America. The British Empire extended to every single continent by its completion. So that includes West Africa, East Africa, North Africa, South Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and even into Oceania through Australia, New Zealand, etc. As the British Empire spread to every continent, many former colonies still use English as their official language today, and that's because of the influence of the British Empire. While Britain was ruling these places and governing, English was the language of the British administration, and so therefore it remained even after the British Empire collapsed. Two examples include Nigeria and Ghana, linguistically diverse countries who've adopted English as their official language after British colonization ended. The second historical factor that we're going to discuss is the role of the United States military. Beginning with the 20th century, the United States became a big player on the world stage in terms of their military power. The picture we see here on the left is an example of a military base the United States constructed in the Philippines. The picture on the bottom is United States troops stationed in South Korea after the South Korean War. And this map shows us where the United States has either military facilities or troops stationed. So we can see that the U.S. has hundreds of military bases located all throughout the world and in other countries. Wherever a U.S. Army installation is located, a military base is, then the local communities are going to speak English to communicate and do business with the troops on that base. Some examples of that include in Japan and Germany after World War II. The United States occupied both countries after the war, built military bases, and those soldiers had a lot of contact with local populations, and that was one way, historically, that English spread as a lingua franca. The same is true for Korea after the Korean War. In the Philippines, the United States had either an occupation or a military presence from 1898, the Spanish-American War, all the way up until 1992 when the final U.S. military base was closed. Okay, the next topic we're going to talk about is what role globalization plays in terms of diffusing English throughout the world and cementing English's position as the worldwide lingua franca. So there's many factors involved in globalization and how globalization has helped to spread English and cement it as the worldwide lingua franca. Now I'm going to project some major identification points, but you're going to have to fill in, based on the descriptions, the details. So one way that English has spread around the world is through music and radio. In many different countries, people listen to English language broadcasts on the radio, they listen to English language music, and because of things like the worldwide transmission of radio and media, it's very easy to hear these artists, and they're played in every country. So that's one way that English has diffused throughout the world through music and radio. Here we can see one example of that, Justin Bieber, who's actually famous worldwide, and his music is famous in countries where people do not speak English as their native language. Another factor is film, television, and sports. Through the wide distribution and popularity of American and British visual media like Hollywood films, Disney animation, American television shows, British television shows, American TV, commercials, the worldwide popularity of the NBA, basketball, as well as the popularity of baseball in the Western Hemisphere, America and Great Britain have been able to spread their culture and with it their language throughout the world, promoting English as the worldwide lingua franca. Example here is the Fast and Furious 7, which did millions and millions of dollars worldwide when it opened. Another factor is the internet. A lot of internet development started here in the US. The United States is really the hearth of some of the most important internet companies. Here you see pictured Google, Wikipedia, Instagram, and Twitter, all of which produce content in English on the internet. And so many users, regardless of what spoken language that they use, they type in English online. So I think it's about 70% of all internet content is created in English, despite the fact that less than half of the users on the internet are English speakers. Another factor of how globalization has advanced English as the lingua franca is through aviation. The use of English in all international aviation operations for safety, navigation, and navigation is mandated. So that means that any pilot, regardless of where they are from, where they're flying to, or where they are flying from, is going to be communicating with other pilots and with the air traffic controllers in the English language. English is the standard for aviation. Finally, we have the increase in tourism worldwide. So English is becoming the language of the international tourism industry. Hotel employees, taxi drivers, tour guides, travel agents, restaurant menus, airline personnel, signs, doctors, etc. All of these have to communicate in one language, and that language has become English. So as more and more people are earning enough money to travel around the world, to visit other countries, that means that more and more people are using English as a lingua franca in order to speak and get around. So this concludes the online lecture. I hope it was informative and entertaining. Good luck.